Welcome back. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli held an international press conference on Sunday reviewing Cairo's vision over the global economic crisis and priorities during the current period. Well, to shed more light on this, we have the pleasure to have this phone with Dr. Taghreed Badr, Professor of Economy. Good afternoon, Dr. Badr. Hello?
Good afternoon.
Well, Dr. Badr, how do you see the vision that was put forward by the government today?
Actually, the government knew very well that the nature of the crisis has specific aspects, and the Prime Minister, as a critical point, he emphasized about the nature of the crisis. We are dealing with an international crisis. So
yes.
We have a high level of uncertainty in all countries. And for the Egyptian economy, as we have a large degree of the economic openness, we cannot separate the effect of the crisis. So we are dealing with an international economic crisis, needed some very important procedures. And he also emphasized that the economic reform program applied in 2016 gave Egypt the chance to handle the crisis effects.
Yes, so Dr. Badr, also the Prime Minister said that the national mega projects are the path towards sustainable development, and adding that they have created 5 million job opportunities, while unemployment rate has decreased from 13% to 7% in Egypt. What's your comment?
Yes, sure. Actually, the Prime Minister began his speech and his report without the economic reform program applied in 2016, the Egyptian status of economic will be very worse. So the public mega project gives Egypt the chance to lower the economic unemployment rate from, as you mentioned, 13% to around 7% or 8% now. And he also managed to raise the economic growth rate for about now 5%. And he also gave a sentence saying that without the coronavirus pandemic, the economic growth rate will be reached now for 7 or 8%.
Yes. So, Dr.
This, of course, shows the importance of the public mega project.
Yes. So, Dr. Badr, also Dr. Mustafa Madbouli said that Egypt tourism revenues grown in the first quarter of this year. The Premier also added, for example, that the revenues of the Suez Canal rose unprecedented rise in the Suez Canal revenues that Egypt have witnessed.
Yes, the Suez Canal revenues now reached 13% in 2021, and this percent is a huge percent relative to the previous year. But also, the current crisis gives many negative impacts on the other indicators because the Russia-Ukraine crisis lowers the number of tourists, and this is a big source of the dollar term in Egypt for the external reserve. So that's why Egypt is trying to create and innovate in novel sources to sum up the foreign currency.
Yes, so Dr. Badr, also the Premier have said that Egyptian exports have risen by 85% recently.
Yes, sure. Egypt managed to raise export values to by around 85%. And they are also trying to handle the external debt, especially in the current status of the dollar value or the foreign exchange rate, which reaches 19.3 now. And in doing so, they are emphasizing on a critical point to supporting the private sector.
Yes. So also, Dr. Badruddin, how do you see the Egyptian government dealing with the coronavirus pandemic challenge?
Actually, the period of the post-pandemic is a critical period because we witnessed many negative impacts on the macroeconomic indicators or main macroeconomic variables. So they are trying to make some procedures to support the Egyptian economy or the economic performance in Egypt by strengthening the industrial sector, promoting the private sector, making incentives to launch a partnership with the private sector to give opportunity to create more job opportunities for the people.
Yes, Dr. Madbouli also said that the National Authority for Intellectual Copyrights will be established. Also, he said that measures to issue investment licenses will be eased, as well as measures to found startups.
Yes, sure. As the Prime Minister mentioned in the conference, the private sector now managed to handle around 30% of the investment opportunities or investment projects handled in Egypt, and the public sector is responsible for the 70% of the investment here. Actually, they launched a project that within the next 3 years, they will support the private sector to run or control 65% from the investment project or the investment plan.
Yes, also the Prime Minister said a unit affiliated to the cabinet has been formed in order to solve any problem that would face investors. Also, I would like to ask you, Dr. Badruddin, concerning the Prime Minister saying that Egypt is one of the locations that is nominated to be a center for producing green hydrogen. How do you see this?
Actually, it's a part of the national strategy to give a green license for the private sector, because the main target now is to support the private sector with the main or all possible techniques and procedures. We are about announcing the policy statements to define the sector that government is interested in and the sector that should be as the responsibility or under the responsibility of the private sector, and the other sector that will be left to the private sector to handle. Yes. And we are assuring the role of the private sector in all the projects or national projects. We are also providing around $40 billion for the partnership with the private sector, plus around 15 billion and another 9.1 billion. Assets will be provided or launched for in the market for the private sector.
Yes, so Dr. Badruddin, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli at the end said that Egypt will be able to overcome the crisis and continue with its development path. So what do we expect in the near future?
We are expecting, because when we look at the main macroeconomic indicators or variables now, the numbers are for some degree as good. So I think within the next future we will manage, because we have not witnessed a huge negative impact for the crisis. We managed to fight the crisis during the pandemic itself, and I think after the pandemic the environment will be much better.
Yes, I thank you very much for your valuable information. Thank you for your time, Dr. Taghreed Badruddin, Professor of Economy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a short break and I'm going to be back with you.